the Supreme Court ruling talks about civil marriage. And it specifically, as you mentioned, excludes churches and officiants from having to put up with marriages that they don't agree with. And there's a lot of things that people of various faiths say are sinful, but they are perfectly legal. Alcohol, gambling, divorce, cutting your hair, wearing jewelry, we could go on. If you don't believe that alcohol is good for your faith, then don't drink. And if you don't believe that gay marriage is right, then don't have one. No one should ever be forced to marry someone that they don't love. And we would certainly not support that. And no one should be required not to marry someone that they do love. You brought up the issue of activist judges. I have no doubt that if the ruling had gone the way of my opponents, that they would have celebrated that ruling. We would not be here tonight. They would have said, of course, we must listen to the judges. But since the ruling went against them, they claim that they're these liberal appointees. There's 6 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And these are long-standing judges who are known for relatively conservative rulings. And for them to look at this case and say that they believe that there's a right to gay and lesbian couples to marry speaks volumes for the conservative point of view, I think. And it wasn't these judges that created this so-called class of citizens. That happened in 1992. The conservative Rehnquist Supreme Court of the United States, in the case Romer versus Evans, said simply that the class of citizens known as gay and lesbian people cannot be denied the rights under law simply because they're gay or lesbian. And so that dates back 16 years in a very important precedent-setting case. Secondly, domestic partnership is not marriage. It's not even close. And you point out that there are various contracts that any couple can enter into to make sure that they are covered by various rights, and they shouldn't have to hire a lawyer and pay all kinds of expenses to put that paperwork together and then make sure you carry it in your purse because they're not allowed to marry. Marriage should absolutely be conferred upon couples of 2 consenting adults. Let me just give you some examples. To be a domestic partner, both partners must be 18. To marry in this state, you can be as young as 16. You must cohabitate if you are domestic partners. But married people are not necessarily required to do so. A married partner can sponsor a spouse for immigration. Domestic partners cannot do so. There's less protection for domestic partners at termination. It turns out that divorce is a right. And it helps to protect both partners from one cheating the other under very difficult and usually very emotional circumstances. And those protections need to be in place for married gay and lesbian couples. Domestic partners may not have a confidential marriage. Domestic partners must testify against their spouse in court, where married couples are not required to do so. Domestic partner medical benefits are taxable. If my wife uses my medical benefits from my school district, I have to pay taxes on whatever benefits she uses, and married couples simply do not. Even if I accepted, even if I didn't know all those things to be true, and even if I accepted that domestic partners had exactly all the rights, and even if someday they had all the federal rights, all 1,300 of them that there are, it's to say that there is a large group of people that gets to call themselves by the M word, but you people have to use a different term, that's riding in the back of the bus. It's just wrong. Charles Manson can marry. Andrea Yates killed all 5 of her kids, and she could marry in prison and have more. Is this issue really about protecting marriage? Because if it is, why don't we see people working on that stuff? How can a convicted child molester get out of jail, marry a woman who has children several times? Marriage doesn't need to be protected. As an institution in a variety of forms, it goes back many, many years. And we all understand what that institution means socially. And yet, despite all of the negatives that sometimes are attached to marriage, like divorce, single parents, domestic violence, Hollywood celebrities, people still want to get married. Every couple wants the hope that their marriage will have the social and legal recognitions that come with being with someone for life. And marriage is not suffering as a result of all these other negative things. People still get married. And people deserve that opportunity. Gay and lesbian people, I don't know that we're necessarily going to be better at getting married. I doubt that we'll be worse. Surely there will be gay and lesbian divorces. There will also be a large number of gay and lesbian weddings. In California, just since June, there have been 11,000 weddings in the state. That's an amazing thing. And I defy anyone to produce even one couple who says, well, gay people get married, I'm getting divorced. People are going to continue to get married. The institution of marriage is in good hands with loving couples who plan to stay together as long as they both shall love. And love makes a family. There are all kinds of diverse families, even in this county. Gay and lesbian parented families, straight couple parented families, parents who have been divorced and remarried and share children, mixed families of all kinds, single parent families. All of those kinds of diverse families need to be recognized. And since you bring up the issue of schools, they need to be recognized in schools as well. Those textbooks that reflect information on gay history or gay heroes say to those gay children or to children of gay parents that their families are fine, that there is nothing wrong with their family, and they can grow up to be healthy, happy children who take advantage of school services as they need them, and they too can have healthy and happy marriages. Schools are supposed to be safe havens for all children, and no teacher should ever state or imply, by commission or omission, that one child's family does not measure up to someone else's. That's abuse. The only reason we're even mentioning gay marriage now in schools, in my classroom for instance, is because of this proposition. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having that conversation in my classroom at all. But in government, we talk about current events. So it's not something I wanted to spend a lot of time on. Frankly, it's a bit of a distraction. But if we have to continue to see this information in the news, it's going to continue to come up in the classroom. I'd like to finally address the issue of majority rule. Prop 22 passed 8 years ago, as you mentioned. And there's a lot of historic precedent for laws being passed and then unpassed years later when we discover that there's a problem. And the greatest example of this is prohibition. We pass a law saying we're going to make alcohol illegal throughout the entire nation based on our moral values, and we discover after only 13 years that it ain't working out so well. And we repeal it because we learned that this isn't who we want to be as a nation. Restricting this kind of alcohol just caused crime, and it made people who were ordinary, regular citizens who occasionally wanted to have a beer criminals, and that was wrong. So we changed that law, and we do that sort of thing all the time. It's in history many times. We create a law with all best intentions, and then we discover that it doesn't work, and we make a new one. Prop 22 is the same way. 8 years we voted on this, 8 years ago, and now we have an opportunity to look at that again and say, is that really who we want to be? Is that what the state of California really wants to stand for? And the majority, over the years, has opposed a lot of really important things. They opposed women's right to vote. If that had been put to a vote of the people back in 1920, it would never have passed. They opposed interracial marriage. Indeed, they opposed ending segregation. If we had put slavery to a vote, we'd still have it. That we should, once the people have voted, God knows how long ago, that should be how it is. And I would just like to point out that this is the fourth time we've seen Prop 4 on the ballot, and it has failed 3 times in the past, and yet here it again appears on the ballot, proposed by the same people who are putting up Prop 8. And in Prop 8, they want you to say that what the people voted should stand, and with Prop 4, they want to re-vote on it until they get what they want. And that's hypocrisy of the first order. I urge a no vote on Prop 8 for a million different reasons. And the main reason is, I remember on June 17th, when I stood at the courthouse in Bakersfield, and I was there with my mother, my sister, one of my sisters flew, and my nephew came in, and I stood there with my family. And I remember thinking that I had been told that homosexuality destroys families. And what I learned that day is that homophobia destroys families. My mother was interviewed by the Los Angeles Times as saying that this day was tantamount to the excitement she felt at childbirth. And that was a real positive statement for my family. And I know that when we embrace our gay members and we don't put so many roadblocks on who they are or what they can do, families are always stronger. Vote no on Prop 8, ladies and gentlemen.